right. One may one may not separate truma from oil for olives, which are due to be crushed, or from wine for grapes that are due to be trodden. But if they did separate it, truma is truma. But he must separate again. The first by itself renders meduma, and one is liable to the added fifth, but is not the second. But not the second. One may separate truma from oil for olives, which are due to be preserved, and from wine for grapes, which are due to be made into raisins. If one separated truma from oil for olives intended for eating, from olives for olives intended for eating, from wine for grapes intended for eating, or from grapes for grapes intended for eating, and then he decided to tread them, he need not separate truma. One may not separate truma from produce which is in a finished state, for produce which is in an unfinished state, or from produce in an unfinished state for produce in a finished state, or from produce in an unfinished state for produce in an unfinished state. But if he did separate truma, his truma is truma.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, pick base. Ein tarmin mitahor alatame. So now we've been through certain distinctions in truma. We said we're not allowed to uh, take from things that are not finished to things that are finished, from the things that are that have already been mastered, that mina patur alachayev. Okay, so now we're introducing another distinction between tahor and tameh. Now, as you know, when you take truma, it's supposed to be tahor. You want because the coin is not going to be allowed to eat it unless it's tahor. So lechatchila, you want to make sure that whatever truma you take is tahor. Now, there's another rule that we haven't explicitly stated over here, but is actually relevant to what we're saying over here, is that it has to be min hamokaf. In other words, it's got to be in close proximity. So you can't.
Right.
So what you can't do is have a pile of produce over here, and you've got a pile of produce over there in your storeroom. You say, okay, well, I'm taking produce from here to for my storeroom over there, because that's not min hamokaf. Okay, now. Now what we have over here is in Tormin mitahor alatama. You cannot take truma from tower produce. I mean, tower is where you're supposed to take the truma from, but in order to exempt a pile of tame produce. Now, now, why are you not allowed to do that? Why shouldn't you be able to do that? Because of the rule that I just told you of min hamukaf. It's got to
Mhm.
be close. And if they're close together, and if you say, okay, well, if we're going to permit you to take from tahor and tame, then we're concerned that you're going to bring them close together, and therefore, and potentially, if they've been mukhshar, then the tame produce can make the tahor produce tame as well. Okay, and then you cannot give the truma to I mean the coin cannot have any benefit from it. So that's why we make it as a gezerah. You shouldn't do this. But in Tarmu Truma San Truma, however, if you went ahead and did it, it's nonetheless valid because Tachlis at the end of the day, you've still got valid Truma over here. You can still give it to the coin and everything's okay. It's just that we didn't want you to bring them close together in case of the transmission of Truma. Be'emes Amru. Now, when the Mishnah comes and says Be'emes, that almost invariably means that this is going to be the halacha, that this is got like almost status of halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Eagle shell devela. If you have a situation where you've got a pressed fig cake, right, and the whole fig cake, the way they make it is they use the juice of the figs to make it stick together, which means that the whole thing was never it is not it's not considered as one unit as for tumah. So even if a piece of the fig cake became wet, and then somebody touched a piece of touched it over there, it does not transmit tumah to the rest of the fig cake, only to the piece over there because uh, there's no transmission between. It's considered like separate little figs that have been pressed together.
Right.
Okay, there's some rules. So העיגל של טבלה שנטמע מקצתו תורם מן הטהור שיש בו על הטמא שיש בו. So in this is a wonderful classic situation where you've got tame connected with tahor, where you've got a piece of it is tame, but you can take truma from the tahor portion to exempt the tame portion. Okay,
Okay.
v'chein aguda shel yarak, and the same thing goes for a bundle of vegetables. V'chein arima, and also a pile. Sorry, I've forgotten what the pile is.
Heap,
I'm not
heap
sure.
grain.
Him?
Heap of grain. Heap of grain.
A heap of grain. Now, why a heap of grain where there is a section that became tame, I guess. Um,
Is
okay.
it as a heap of grain, though not one bunch like a bundle of vegetables, one may nevertheless separate from its clean for its unclean part.
Yeah, אף על פי מכל מקום נטמע מקצתו תורם. Yeah, it's right. So if one part of it became tame, yeah, I guess so. You're keeping track because, like, I'm thinking grain. Like, how on earth do you keep track of what's tame? I guess you just take a generous portion around the outside of so that you can pull out everything that became tame. But okay, so you can take truma from the tower portion of that pile. Hayishnei igulim. Now, what happens if you've got two fig cakes, or two bundles of vegetables, or two piles of grain? Achas Tmea Achas Tahora, one of which is Tahor, one of which is Tameh. So now they're two separate entities. Lo Yitzrom Yisrael Zeh, and that's what our Mishnah is coming to tell you is that, well, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't take from one on the other because then you'd be bringing them closer together. And now we don't want to take the risk of one transmitting to the other. Just as a general rule, you shouldn't take from two separate entities where one is Tameh, one is Tahor. Rabbi Eliezer Omer Tormin min tahor ala tamei, and Rabbi Eliezer says, "I'm not bothered by this. Um, I don't really care about um, about the possibility that you're going to bring the tamei to touch the tower. Okay, halacha is not like Rabbi Eliezer. Mishnah base and tormin min hatame ala tahor. And okay, what you definitely can't do is take from tame on tahor produce because you're supposed to be giving the truma to the kohen, and therefore why would you take from the tame to examine to the tahor? Once you've got tahor, it needs to come from the tahor. The im taram, and if he actually did take from the tame and the tahor. What's the effect of this? So the question is, what was his das? Was he unaware that it was tameh? Was it a mistake, or did he do it deliberately? Shogeg trumas at trumo. If he did it by mistake, he didn't realize that what he was taking from was tameh, then it's valid. Mazid lo asaklum. We say that the if he deliberately separated out from Tame, trying to get away with not giving to the coin, then we invalidate his taking of truma. V'chein ben Levi shehaya lo maaser tevel. Similar situation happens if a Levi was given a bunch of maaser rishon by Israel. Now the Levi has the responsibility to take off the trumas maaser from there. Okay, hayamafrish alav v'holech. So if he's got this bunch of master table over here, and he keeps on taking trimmer off this portion for what other people are bringing him. So he uses this to keep on taking. Okay, this tenth over here is for all of these things, and this tenth over here is for all of those things. So if he keeps separating like that, Masha soy. What he's done is done. But Mazid lo asa klum. If he did this deliberately, why is this Mazid if he knew that the master was Tame? This is the point is that he didn't did he realize that what he's got over in his hands over here that he's busy separating from, did he know that it was Tame? If he knew, then his actions are considered meaningless. He didn't separate anything. Rabbi Yehuda אומר, אם היה יודע בו בתחילה, אף על פי שהוא שוגג, לא עשה כלום. Said even if he was unaware at the time that he did it, but he had known in the beginning, and it just slipped his
Uh,
mind that this was tame, it's still lo asa klum, because that's shogeg, that's karav lemezid. Your forgetfulness is over here is on the most is extremely negligent, and therefore we consider it as if it was deliberate. Um, I don't see anyone saying that this is or isn't the halacha in my commentary here, but it seems like a reasonable position for Rabbi Yehuda to take. Mishnah's Gimel. Hamat bil kalim b'Shabbos. What happens if somebody Tovel's dishes on Shabbos. You're not allowed to do that lechatchila. If your kalim were not usable before, and you take your kalim to mikveh on Shabbos, now you're allowed to use them. That's tikkun kli. So you're not allowed to do that. Shogeg yishtamesh b'hem. If he did it, not realizing that that was the halacha, or not realizing um, or even you don't need das for Tvilas Kalim. Did you know that? So it could be that like a kid took the thing to mikveh and dunked it in, and um, although we're dealing with it where there's an adult doing it, because that's we're dealing with the halacha where an adult went ahead and toveled something in the mikveh. Okay. Mazid lo yishtamesh b'hem. However, if he was mazid, then he shouldn't use them for that Shabbos. Maaser v'hamavashel b'Shabbos. Similarly, if somebody takes maaser from produce on Shabbos, or he cooks food on Shabbos, shogeg. If he did it b'shogeg, yochel, then he's allowed to eat from it. Mazid lo yochel. But if it deliberately, then he should not eat. Then he should not eat. Okay. And immediately I have to tell you that this is the halacha according to this of the Stam Mishnah is Rabbi Meir, and the halacha does not follow Rabbi Meir. Rather, the halacha follows that Rabbi Yehuda, and that if somebody does a malacha on Shabbos, then nobody is allowed to benefit from that malacha on Shabbos. After Shabbos, the other people are allowed to benefit from it, Kadesha Yeasu, but he himself who did it, he's never allowed to benefit from his halacha, from his
He cooks
halacha. Yeah,
Shabbos. He can't eat from it after Shabbos, but the other people can.
other people can. So now, this is for. It's interesting. I'm not sure what the halacha is about the tevilas kalim. Does he need, if he wants to, like, let's say he made a mistake with his kli, does he now need to give away his kli and he can't ever use the kli again, or is it sufficient if he just takes the kli back to mikveh after Shabbos, dunks it again? I don't know. It seems it would seem a little harsh that he can never use the kli again. Um, but we are machmir on him when it comes to benefiting from cooking, right? And the food that he cooked. But it seems like it would be a lesser, it's a much lesser penalty to say, okay, you can't eat this food that you cooked. But to say
Right.
that you could never benefit from this kli again, uh, I don't know. I don't know what the halacha is, but it's an interesting one if it ever comes to a shaila. Anyway, hanotea b'Shabbos shogeg yekayim. If he plants on Shabbos accidentally, then you're allowed to keep the tree that he planted. Mazid Yaakor, but if he did it deliberately, then it must be uprooted. Ubashviis, if it's in the Shemitah year, Bain Shogeg, Bain Mazid Yaakor, it doesn't matter. We're much more machmir with this in the Shemitah year, that even if you didn't know that you were planting a tree, or that planting a tree is asr in Shemitah, forget about that. That has to be uprooted, and so we're more machmir on Shvius over here than we are about Shabbos. Okay. Speaking of Shvius,
No, I'm just going to say that.
hey,
Okay. Um, if one preserved three vegetables in one jar, Rabbi Eliezer says one may eat on account of the first. Rabbi Yehuda says also on account of the last. Rabbi Gamil says if a species is ended in the field, that species must be eliminated from the jar, and the halakha follows him. Rabbi Shimon says all vegetables are as one in regard to beer, but one may not one may eat portuluk until vegetables have ended in the valley of Beit Tofa. If one gathers fresh herbs until the moisture has dried up, and if one gathers dry until the next rainfall, that leaves of reeds and of vines until they fall from their stems. If one gathers dry from the second rainfall, the Rebbe Akiva says all of them until the second rainfall. Likewise, if one lets a house to his fellow until the rains, until the second rainfall, if one vowed not to derive any benefit from his fellow until the rains, until the second rainfall, until when may the poor enter the orchards, until the second rainfall? From when may one make use of the use of or burn straw and stubble in the seventh year? From the second rainfall. Okay.
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 Kilayim, space.
A domestic animal with a domestic animal, a wild animal with a wild animal, a domestic animal with a wild animal, and a wild animal with a domestic animal, unclean with unclean, clean with clean, unclean with clean, clean with unclean, are forbidden to plow or draw or to drive. He who receives 40 and one who sits in the wagon receives 40, the mayor exempts, and the third, which is tied to the straps, is forbidden. A horse may not be tied to the sides of a wagon or to the back of a wagon, nor may Libyan donkeys be tied to camels. Rabbi Yehuda says all offspring of a horse, though tied by a donkey, are allowed with one another. All offspring of a donkey are tied by a horse, are likewise allowed with one another. However, the offspring of a horse are forbidden with the offspring of a donkey. Okay,
Uh,
marker over here.
hold on, isn't there some? Yeah, there's more in that Mishnah.
And that missed last one. I have, however, the offspring
Oh, I
of a
think
horse.
no, no, I'm sorry. You're right. That was it. I'm just translating the English and the Hebrew. Fine.
Okay.
Yadayim, last
I'm
Mishnah.
sorry.
Last
I'm
Mishnah in
with,
Yadayim.
okay. Galilean seduced said, I have complained against you, Perusha, for you write the name of the ruler together with the name of a Moses on in a bill of divorce. Perushan say, we have a complaint against you, Galilean seduced you, because you write the name of the ruler together with the name of God in one column. And moreover, you write the name of the ruler above the name of the God below. As it says in Pharaoh, who is Hashem, that I should heed his voice to send out Israel. And when he was smitten, what did he say? Hashem is the righteous one.
Hadron Allah
And
Masechet Yadayim and Uktzim.
anything that has a yad, but not a shomer, contracts truma and conveys truma, but does not combine. A shomer, even if it is not a yad, contracts truma, conveys truma, and combines. Anything that is not a shomer and is not a yad neither contracts truma nor conveys truma. The roots of garlic, onion, and leek when they are moist, and their protrusions whether they are moist or dry, and the stalk that is directly opposite the food. The roots of lettuce, round radish, and oblong radishes. These are the words of Rev Meir. Rabbi Yehuda says the large root of the radish combines, but its fibrous roots does not combine. And the roots of mint and rue and of field greens and garden greens that one uprooted in order to transplant them, and the spine of an ear of grain and the grain's covering. Of Eliezer says also the dust covering. These contract tuma, convey tuma, and combine. Okay,
Okay.
and we have oleos. Okay, base. A quarter log of blood and a quarter log of death blood convey tumor if they are from one corpse. Rabbi Akiva says even if they are from two corpses. If all the blood of an embryo emanated, Rabbi Akiva says even a tiny amount conveys tumor, whereas the sages say only if there is a quarter log. An olive's volume of worms, whether alive or dead, Rabbi Eliezer declares a tummy like the flesh of a corpse, but the sages declare a tahu. The ash of a cremated corpse, the ash of cremated corpses, Rabbi Eliezer says its minimum measure to convey tumor is a quarter cob of ash, but the sages declare a tahor. A little more than a laden full of grave powder is tame, and Rebbe Shimon declares a tahor. A ladle full of corpse powder that was kneaded with water is not considered connected in respect to tumor. These convey tumor via touch or carrying, but do not convey tumor via an ohel, a bowl on the sides of a barley on the land of the nation.
Is it me or you?
Small one used by physicians. These are the words of the Maya, but they commentate the large gimlet of a temple chamber. The
Yeah.
cover of a grave,
Yeah.
that's
So
it.
carry on. Yes. One more.
One more, right? The cover of a grave and its support convey tumor if touched through ohel, but none of them if they are carried. The Eliezer says they do not convey tumor if they are carried. Rabbi Yeshua says if underneath them there is earth from the grave, they convey tumor when carried, and if not, they do not convey tumor when carried. What is support? That which upon which the cover itself rests. However, a support for support is tahu.
Yeah.
And we have Helios. Okay, Aleph Yudal. With regard to a bridal chair whose spindles were removed, Beit Shammai declared Tameh, but Beit Hillel declared Tahor. Shammai says even the malbum of the chair is Tameh. With regard to a chair that one affixed to a kneading trough, Shammai bears it Tameh, but Beit Hillel declares it Tahor. Shammai says even the chair made originally to be in the kneading trough is susceptible to Tumas Midrash. These are the matters about which Beit Hillel reversed themselves to henceforth rule in accordance with the view of Saint Beit Shammai. If a woman came from overseas and she said, "My husband died overseas," she may marry. "My husband died overseas," she may be taken in Yubim. But Beit Hillel says we have not heard this tradition except in a case where she comes from the grain harvest. Beit Shammai said to them, "It is the same whether she comes from the harvest, and it is the same whether she comes from the harvest of olives, and it is the same whether she comes from overseas." The rabbi spoke in terms of the harvest only, but because it was the incident as it happened. And subsequently, Beit Hillel reversed themselves to therefore rule in accordance with Beit Shammai. Beit Shammai says she may remarry and collect her ketubah, but Beit Hillel says she may remarry, but she does not collect her ketubah. Beit Shammai said to them, if you have permitted the grave matter of erva, then you shall not then certainly permit the less grave matter of money. Beit Hillel said to them, we find that the brothers do not enter into possession of the estate on the basis of our testimony. Beit Shammai said to them, but we can learn this ruling for a ketubah document, for it is written to her that if you marry another, you will take what is written to you. And Beit Hillel reversed themselves to thenceforth rule in accordance with the opinion of Beit Shammai. And who is a half slave and who is a free man? I'm sorry, second. Who is a half slave and half a free man? One works one day for his master and one day for himself. These are the words of Beit Hillel. Beit Shammai said to Beit Hillel, you have provided a solution for his master, but for him himself you have not provided a solution. He is not to have a provide. He is not able to marry a slave woman. He is not able to marry a free woman. Shall he remain idle? But that was not the world created for propagation. As it is stated, God did not create it in the world to be desolate. He formed it to be inhabited. Rather, for the betterment of society, we force his master, and he must make him a completely free man, and the slave must write him a note for his half value. Subsequently, reverse themselves to henceforth rule in accordance with the view of Beit Shammai. Okay.
Right.
And we are on to Megillah. Okay. Aleph Zion. There is no difference between a Zav who experienced two issues and one who experienced three, other than bringing an offering. There is no difference between a confined Mitzorah and a confined Mitzorah except letting the hair grow wild and rending the garments. There is no difference between the laws pertaining to one who was pronounced cleansed after having been confined and those pertaining to one who pronounced cleansed after having been confirmed, except for saving and bringing birds. There is no difference between the laws pertaining to books of scripture and those pertaining to tefillin and mezuzos. Mezuzos, except the books of scripture, may be written in any language, but tefillin and mezuzos must be written only in Assyrian script. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel says that even books of scripture were not authorized to be written except in Greek. There is no difference between the Kohen Gadol anointed with the oil of anointment and the one who donned the additional vestments except the bull offered for a violation of any other precepts. There is no difference between a Kohen Gadol who is serving and a Kohen Gadol who is no longer serving except the bull offered on Yom Kippur and the 10th of the 8th.
Okay. And we're done.
Great.
Okay. Have a
Do
lovely
I? Thank